Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of startAD Studio. Today, I'm joined by Dominic and David from Darabase. I'm going to let them introduce themselves.
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Dominic Collins. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Darabase. We are a technology company that specializes in augmented reality in the physical world and the digital rights for property owners to help to manage and monetize those.
Hi everybody, I'm David. I'm also co-founder of Darabase, and I'm thrilled to be on the Aldar Startup 2 program.
Amazing. Dominic and David have been on the Aldar Scale-Up 2 program. They've just completed it. We've got the closing ceremony next week, so that's exciting. All right, gentlemen, I have a question to just start right at the basics. Where did you get the name Darabase from?
Interesting. Well, it's very simply an AR database. So if you kind of boil the idea right down, it is a registry, it's a rules engine, but at the heart of it, it's a database for how augmented reality, or how kind of is increasingly known the real world metaverse now. Everyone has to say the word metaverse, but how augmented reality is layered on the world around us. So we kind of thought, well, we need some kind of database for controlling how AR content is placed on the world, and how property companies can control that. So it's kind of some kind of AR database. Maybe it's kind of Darabase. And we then did that thing where you kind of go on a domain registry and see whether it's available, thinking that it wouldn't be, and darabase.com was available. So we quickly bought it and had a logo designed, and 4 years later, here we are.
Amazing. All right. So what motivates you guys to get up in the morning?
I think for me, it's really the challenge of building something. In this case, something that we feel that the kind of world and society needs, and it creates a lot of value for our partners and property companies more broadly. And so I think, it's the challenge of kind of creating something new and bringing that to market that drives me every day. Yeah,
and from a kind of non-worky thing, David and I have actually both got dogs. And so regardless of the weather, because we live in the UK, so the weather can be pretty variable. Actually, it's kind of knowing that I'm getting up and getting into the woods and the hills around where I live. Lucky to live kind of close to London, but also in the countryside. In terms of kind of morning motivation, getting a coffee and then getting out with the dog before we start work is also pretty motivating too.
Amazing. So you've got the best of both worlds over here.
Yeah, it's a great place to live.
Have you guys always been working in this field? What were you doing before Darabase?
So Dominic and I have worked together many times over many years at many different types of organisations, from a big telco in the UK. We helped launch the EE brand. We then worked together in an insurance firm called Legal & General, who have a big property portfolio. And then we worked together a third time at a company called Jaunt. Dom, do you want to talk maybe a little bit about Jaunt?
Yeah, so Jaunt, directly before we started Darabase, was where we were working for about 4 years, was a Silicon Valley-based virtual reality and augmented reality company. So it had some amazing kind of founders and backers, like Disney and Sky, and we opened a joint venture in China, which I ran, and ran the international business, and towards the end also the product and engineering team in the States. And it was really while we were at Jaunt, which we ended up selling to Verizon, a large telco in the US. But it was while we were there, we had the kind of the kernel, the seed of the idea for Darabase. And so once we'd left Jaunt, we then worked to set up Darabase and to establish it as we have done today.
Yeah, I think that puts our kind of immersive and Web3 experience in the 7, 8 year, 9 year category, Dom, probably something of that order, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, which is pretty much as long as it's been around. So yeah, hence the beard. We're on the older end of the entrepreneurial side, but yeah, and hopefully bring a lot of experience of working in entrepreneurial and kind of digital transformative roles in large organizations to then kind of growing our somewhat smaller organization.
And when did that shift happen where you're like, okay, I'm done working for other corporations, it's time to be an entrepreneur? What inspired this shift?
Yeah. So on a personal level, I kind of, way back when I was in magazines back in the 90s, and actually was working on Cosmopolitan magazine when the internet very first started. And I think I probably sold one of the very first advertisements on the internet, where we created a link on the Cosmopolitan website, which went to the L'Oreal website kind of back in the mid to late 90s. And so I was always kind of interested in kind of the new technology that was coming through in the beginning of the internet and the World Wide Web and so on. And I suppose on a personal level, I then worked in lots of different organizations in lots of different industries as that kind of wave of change kind of crashed through them. So it's kind of starting a magazine, which is pretty early, and then looking at classified. So I helped lead the digital transformation of a big company called Auto Trader, which is taking that kind of from print to digital. Then through telco, and kind of ending up kind of on the beachhead of finance, I suppose. It's kind of fintech hit finance when we were at Legal and General. And so having kind of ridden this wave of change through all these different industries, kind of got to the point where actually digital was pretty much kind of ubiquitous. Most industries had really been kind of transformed by it, or were kind of very much mature in that transformation journey. And I had this kind of personal kind of pivot moment, as they would call it in Silicon Valley, where I spent all of my career helping big companies be more digital. It might be more fun to now at this point in my career to help digital companies be more big. And actually a lot of the skills and a lot of the experience that you use to kind of internally disrupt and change larger organizations are actually quite transferable to helping to grow a smaller organization to be a disruptor in a larger industry. So it was at that point really that I decided to leave this kind of large FTSE 30 company where I was chief marketing officer in Legal and General, and then go and work for a Silicon Valley based startup, Jaunt. So and since then, yeah, it's a very, very different challenges running your own company, but actually I feel much more rewarding.
Yeah, I kind of did it the other way around. So my second job actually was in a startup. I was like the fourth or fifth person into a startup consultancy firm that operated with technology to perform research in various ways. And I'm still friends with the three founders of that business. They really opened my eyes to a whole new way of working that I'd not really seen before. And I'll always be grateful for that. And what it really taught me, I guess, is that you need a lot of flexibility, creativity, and a lot of resilience to run a startup and operate in a startup environment. There are lots of pressures that aren't what you would call your day job. And having kind of done that, I then also went into the corporate world, as we've discussed already, and learned how to apply those skills in a more entrepreneurial way in a big organization. And then I just kind of returned home and thought, I can be much more influential in a small business that I helped co-found, and hopefully I can bring a lot of the skills that I learned across my career into that and make this a very big and successful business.
Interesting. So two different journeys, and then ultimately you just made your way back to each other. So
yeah, we didn't learn our lessons. We just keep working with each other.
Yeah. rinse and repeat.
Yeah, it's served us pretty well so far. David's very good at the things that I'm not too good at, and vice versa. So we make a good team.
Yeah, it's all about synergy, right? So complementing each other's.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, from your experience, what would you say are some of the low risk ways to enter a new market as an ambitious startup?
I don't think there is one. Is the kind of the obvious answer. There's no risk. Is anything is kind of comparative, and as is risk. And so I think you would be fooling yourself to think that you could go into you could become a disruptive startup in an established industry, or even a brand new industry. You could argue that Darabase is kind of really forging a new industry, and not have any risk. But there's certainly steps that you can take. You will undoubtedly make mistakes, or you will undoubtedly learn new things, or have to learn new things to run an organization. And so if you can surround yourself with people that have made those mistakes already, whether they be great hires, whether they be investors, whether they be advisors, even just kind of friends, being open to learning from other people's mistakes, and letting them to kind of guide you on the journey. Certainly can kind of shortcut and kind of bypass some of those risks, and also being open to change. It seems an obvious thing, but when you start up a company, you have this new baby, and you've kind of formed this baby yourself, and you've kind of got excited about what this baby is going to become. But the reality is, within any startup journey, even though actually our kind of we call it the North Star, kind of the thing that guides us in the long strategic term, has actually very much stayed the same for Darabase, which is to create this registry and rules engine for properties, digital rights, and to allow those to allow property owners to really kind of control and monetize what AR content is seen on their properties, and now and in the future. That has always been the same, but actually the journey to get there, the way that the baby has grown, to what will be adulthood in the future is different to what you imagined at the beginning. So I think the other thing is it's quite risky to kind of be too rigid. You don't want to kind of necessarily be completely pivoting every single moment and, oh, that's a new opportunity there, that's one at that. You still have to kind of have these kind of core objectives and strategies, but recognizing that you're going to have to you're going to hit different bumps and you're going to have to kind of meander slightly to be able to navigate those, to both mitigate the risk but also to maximize the opportunity.
Yeah, I would kind of echo that. I think, large organizations have all of the advantages, but they also have, they have, effectively unlimited resources in terms of money and people, should they choose to deploy them in that way. Their risk is about brand credibility and the ability to enter a market and a right to do so and how they operate. Their disadvantages are often around risk taking themselves. How do they get through the internal sign-offs in order to enter a market or continue to do business in the market they're already in, but in a new way. And so the lower risk ways for startups to enter into that is to take more risk, arguably, right? Is to say, I'm going to do this differently because I know that I can operate more quickly than my larger competitors, and I can steal a march on them, which makes you both interesting as a company and more valuable as a company to your shareholders.
Love that answer. Thank you guys so much. All right, so in this field, just being a startup, there seems to be two tracks that startups usually take into creating new partnerships, which is direct engagement, so speaking to partners directly and having that one-on-one conversation. But there's also sprint accelerator models, accelerator incubators, and so on. So from your experience, have you noticed any differences between these two approaches to creating partnerships? Which one do you prefer?
Yeah, we've done both, and we will continue probably to do both. Direct is great because there's kind of no middleman, right? There's nobody that gets in the way. The downside, however, is that you need an extensive network. You need to spend a lot of time researching. You need to spend a lot of time finding the right person in the organization in order to talk to. Even if you've got a good intro into an appropriate company, finding the right person in that company is very, very difficult. The accelerator models shortcut that whole process massively. So if you can get on a good program whereby they're engaged and teaching and introducing you specifically to the right people, that massively shortens the sales cycle, understands whether that prospective client is genuinely a prospective client, and that they create value by getting you to the end point of that decision on whether to pursue this opportunity or not much more quickly.
Yeah, I just add to that obviously a good accelerator program, and like the one that you've run, and we've really enjoyed it and it's been incredibly valuable, has a structure to it and has a level of engagement within it that means that you learn a lot more about your prospective partner. Because when you have a meeting with somebody, for the first meeting, there is an opportunity, and you're trying as hard as you can to be really finding out about their business, in order that you can make sure that what you're talking about and what you're then proposing thereafter is relevant and is actually going to kind of understand their pain points and is going to deliver a solution to those. But actually they're coming to that meeting excited and wanting to know about what you do. And you've probably got 45 minutes or an hour to try and do both. And at the end of that, hopefully you'll have another meeting. But at that point, it's like, okay, well, let us know what you think you can do. And so you've got a very kind of contracted time frame to be able to do a lot of things in that first meeting. Whereas something like the Scale Up 2 program, it was quite rigid in its structure, but actually in a way that was very positive, we felt at the end, because it really gave both us and also the champions within Aldar and MAF the opportunity to really do those steps that you need to do to be able to create a lot of understanding and should then be most relevant in the proposal and the partnership model that you then come back to the table with. So it takes a lot of investment of time, but actually and we'll find out next week, but hopefully what it then leads to is a much deeper understanding of each other's businesses, and then a much larger opportunity in terms of how you can collaborate.
100%. I'm really happy to hear that you guys enjoyed the program. Ultimately, that's the goal, right? Because startups are at the heart and soul of what startAD does. So it's great to hear that you enjoyed it. So for those of you that don't know, Scale Up is a program that targets mostly international startups and basically helping them scale in the UAE, particularly in Abu Dhabi and Dubai. So Dom and David, how do you see Darabase and Darabase's technology transforming business in the UAE?
I've visited the UAE as a tourist a number of times before joining this program, and I've always found it a fascinating place. In fact, my best man lives in Abu Dhabi and has done for many years now, and I love going out and meeting the people and talking to him and his friends. I think it's fair to say that the kind of physical infrastructure in the UAE has arrived in record time, and the spirit of innovation and investment and the entrepreneurship as part of that growth has been, genuinely inspiring. Every time you go, there's something new. And a lot of that is around, as I say, the physical infrastructure, the buildings, the roads, the air network, etc., that goes along with that in order to provide an amazing physical environment for people to be and operate and work. And we think that our business can add, significant extra value, billions potentially of extra dirhams in value to that physical infrastructure and the built environment. And hopefully that drives the next wave of kind of creativity in those spaces and generates wealth for the UAE and for the property owners and for the population as a whole.
Amazing. And then what applications of Web 3.0 are you most excited about then?
Yeah, so we've kind of hinted at a little bit, and it's very much the kind of at the heart of the conversations that we've been having with Aldar. But just to kind of follow up on what David was saying, just in the same way that the UAE has really kind of led innovation around physical infrastructure and physical build and all of the kind of the lifestyle aspects that go around with that. We feel that there's a real opportunity for the region also to be taking a lead in terms of kind of how blockchain, how tokenization, how kind of what we, as I said before, what we think of as the real world metaverse, i.e. digital content being layered on the physical world, or how the physical world manifests itself in a virtual environment, such as kind of digital twins. That there's a huge drive now, and we're proud that Darabase is kind of one of the kind of quite small but leading lights in that drive, to be really thinking about how the built environment can benefit from this kind of wave of Web3 innovation. And so from our perspective, quite specifically, as David was saying, we think there's significant value now in the digital rights that are associated with physical property, i.e. you're a physical property owner, digital content is going to be seen and layered persistently on your locations, today on mobile phones, but in the fairly near future, as people are increasingly wearing smart glasses, they're going to see digital content layered on the world around them. And we think that actually there's a whole new kind of asset class for property owners to really be thinking about, what is the inherent value of their building and their location for the content that's being layered on that. Because last year, advertising on the mobile phone was the biggest advertising medium in the world, and it was worth over $250 billion. And that money is increasingly going to start being kind of shifting to a kind of Web3 immersive type computing platform. And the canvas for that will be property owners' locations. And so we think there's a significant opportunity, not just thinking about the content that will be placed in that location, but also then how that can be controlled, monetized, managed, and how you can really value the digital rights and potentially monetize those, both as a balance sheet asset value, but also as a revenue by allowing others to kind of share in the future of that by almost kind of leasing the digital rights to crypto investors. So it's something that we're very much leading on. We can't say too much about it right now, but we're excited about the next few years. And we think that actually the UAE as a region can really lead the world in terms of helping to establish some of those mechanics and some of those ecosystems and some of those ways of working. Hence, we were incredibly excited about working on this program and establishing ourselves in the region.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Asked everything I wanted to ask. I do have one final question though. What's next in the world of Darabase? What can we expect?
Well, we're incredibly excited about the opportunity to be working with Aldar. So obviously we'd love to be collaborating on that, but more broadly, we have a lot of technology and development, which really starts to help to establish and kind of codify the digital rights that we've spoken about, such that property companies like Aldar across the world can really start to today understand the future value of those rights, to be able to create this asset class such that they can be accounted for and controlled and then also potentially traded. So we can't say too much because it's a little bit stealth, but we're in discussion with a lot of companies across the world around kind of becoming launch partners in that, and we're excited that hopefully Aldar will be that for the Middle East.
Amazing. We hope so too. We're really excited to see how Darabase will grow and where in the world it will grow to. It was a pleasure working with you over the last 4 weeks. And I hope we get to work together again soon. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Tina. You're a star.